Right, okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this lunchtime webinar, which is part of the Seeing is Believing project for the North Eastern Yorkshire Net Zero Hub. I'm John Taylor, Head of Capacity Building and Strategic Development at Community Energy England. I'll be chairing the session today. So today we're also, we're joined today by two excellent speakers. The title of today's event is Understanding Public Procurement for Community Energy, Social Value and Community Wealth Building. So with the local power plan launch, certainly that was very much the big hook, was the ability to not just produce clean energy, but regenerate places through ownership of renewable energy. So more collaboration between local authorities and community energy organisations is going to be a big pillar of the next few years. We're joined today by two excellent speakers, Jim Owen, who is Procurement Manager of Energy Systems Catapult, and Dr. Colin Nolden, Non-Executive Director at Community Energy Pathways, and a researcher at the University of Sheffield. There will be some time for questions at the end, so please use the Zoom's Q&A function to submit questions throughout the session and say hello and introduce yourselves as well. Proper questions for the panelists into the Q&A bit, and we'll get round to them late in a moment. This session is being recorded, and we'll put slides and YouTube channel resources up online very soon if you want to share this with colleagues who can't be here today. Okay, so Seeing is Believing is funded by the North Eastern Yorkshire Net Zero Hub and delivered in partnership with Community Energy England, Ashden and the Centre for Sustainable Energy. The aim of Seeing is Believing is to show the art of the possible for community energy and encourage more collaboration between community energy organisations with their local authorities and other stakeholders in North Eastern Yorkshire. Sorry, one second, just had some background noise there.
This is a security business.
Sorry about that. So Seeing is Believing. It's a collaboration between ourselves and Ashton, and we're also joined today. As part of this, we're doing programs involving site visits, tours, networking events, matchmaking, and community engagement activities. And today's session is also a collaboration with ourselves and Community Energy Pathways and the Energy Systems Catapult. Community Energy Pathways are working to enable local people and local authorities to scale up the community energy sector, with Energy Systems Catapult as an independent innovation organisation that helps companies, governments and partners develop, test and scale clean energy solutions across the whole energy system. As many of you know, Community Energy England, we're the national network and representative body for community energy in England, with over 330 members now active. If you're not a member already, we'd encourage you to join us. Pathways and the Catapult are currently delivering a piece of work for GB Energy, developing tools and guidance for shared ownership of solar farms and wind farms between commercial developers, local authorities, and community energy organisations. So that's great bit of guidance and toolkit which will be appearing very soon. So we'll kick off today's session, and I'll introduce and hand over to Jim Owen, Procurement Manager at Energy Systems Catapult. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Yes, and good afternoon, everybody. Really pleased to be here and talking with you today. So a little bit of an introduction. I am the Catapult's procurement manager. I joined the Catapult 10 years ago as a startup organisation. And when I joined, there was no procurement processes or procedures in place. So I had a complete blank canvas to kind of shape and form the procurement function. As you can see, if you go to the next slide for me, actually, please, Faith. Thank you. You can see my background in procurement has spanned many different categories, some of which are detailed here. But I have to say, a highlight for me when I was with National Grid was working on the anti-terrorism and security category, which was the biggest project that organisation had, and was circa of about £1.22 billion over 7 years. And if anyone wants to hear about how a farmer in Aberdeen got shot walking around one of our gas terminals, I'll be happy to answer that later on. Next slide, please. So getting procurement right from day one. As I said, that I started with the Catapult as a startup. We work with many local authorities and public sector bodies. So what I want to try and do is just give you some insights and useful information that I found over the last 10 years working in this area. So on the first slide, I want to set the scene about getting procurement from day one is so important for community energy organisations to work effectively and build partnerships with local authorities and public sector bodies. Consider every pound that you spend really as part of your limited resource base. Getting procurement wrong can tie you into unsuitable and high risk arrangements, but getting it right helps you free up funding for delivery, build confidence with public sector partners. Council and public bodies look for suppliers who can demonstrate the same discipline and transparency in how they work. So the more you mirror what they do, it lands well with those particular bodies. Any key concept in public procurement is around this whole life value or value for money. You will hear that a lot. It's not just about the upfront price, but it's about the total cost and benefit over the life of the contract. And this includes licenses, renewals, maintenance for support. And when you show that you're thinking in those terms, you speak the same language as your local authority clients. And trust me, we all like that. Start by defining the scope clearly. Be specific around your outcomes, what you're going to deliver, when and how, rather than just vague ambitions. For example, instead of saying we'll provide community engagement, describe how, the number of households for the community groups, the timelines, the measurable results. That clearly makes your proposal stronger and more valuable in public sector body tenders. Manage the scope carefully. Scope creep can eat into your revenue. Public contracts often include formal change controls, and mirroring this in your own project governance shows real professionalism, and again, it's really welcomed by public bodies. When it comes to evaluation, think how local authorities work and assess bids, and this is around price, quality, social value, which you hear much more about later on, deliverability and managing risk. You can apply these principles when delivering and choosing your own partners. Develop a very simple framework. For example, you could put 40% on price, 30% on value, quality 20%, and use 10% around delivery and risk and innovation for community benefit. Ask suppliers for comparable information, so you're marking them all on the same exam paperwork. Experience working with public bodies, environmental credentials, evidence of community impact. This is not only improves your choices, but it helps you align with what councils and local authorities are looking for from their suppliers. The key message here, if you haven't got it, is be deliberate, have a clear scope, structured evaluation and transparency in your procurement for simple buying into something that strengthens your credibility and adds resilience to your organisation. Now, next slide, we're going to talk around due diligence, risk and continuous value. You can move on. Thank you. So this slide, I'm going to focus on those areas: due diligence, managing risk, sustaining value throughout your delivery. It's all crucial when working alongside public sector bodies. Due diligence doesn't have to be complex. Before you appoint any partner or subcontractor, check their financial standing, governance practices, insurance cover. Local authorities will expect you to have done this, particularly if any public funding is involved. If you're forming consortia or partnerships, make sure that roles and responsibilities and liabilities are clear right from the outset. Compliance is really important too. Even small community energy groups need to show awareness of things like GDPR, health and safety regulations, relevant environmental standards. Councils increasingly expect suppliers to demonstrate reasonable data handling and sustainability credentials. So it pays to have these policies in place ready for when you do start bidding into these tenders. In contracts, capture the essentials clearly: your scope, your price, service standard, exit terms, ownerships of IP, data protection requirements, reflecting good public sector practice. For example, fair payment terms on clarity on change processes reassures potential clients that you've understood how they operate. From a value perspective, think about total cost of ownership and long-term partnership. Can you build flexibility into the pricing if the project allows it? Are there opportunities for shared savings or community investment models? These approaches align well with public sector focus on social value and long-term impact. Finally, remember that value doesn't stop at contract award. You've got to track your performance against simple metrics, have SLAs and KPIs against agreed milestones. Satisfaction on local partners or community outcomes are achieved. Having evidence of continuous improvement and accountability will strengthen future bids for future applications. The takeaway that procurement discipline builds trust, putting a little bit of structure, due diligence, clear contracts, and regular review shows funders and councils that your organisation is safe, capable, and socially minded partner. Move on to my last slide, please. So some practical next steps. So build your procurement awareness early. Understand how, like I've tried to emphasise the message there, understand how local authorities buy goods and services and try and mirror some of their practices in your own. Get registered on procurement portals like Contracts Finder and apply to be on regional frameworks. Learn key terms from tenders, evaluation criteria, social value weighting, and use those to your benefit. And then strengthen your organisational readiness. Have all the core policies in place, ready for when you start bidding. Make sure you have the proper insurance and governance documents are all up to date, and develop clear references and case studies demonstrating impact. And please, please, please don't fall foul of using AI just to tweak a tender. We can see straight through those, and trust me, it doesn't go down well. Partner where it does add value. Collaborate with experienced suppliers and social enterprises. Define clear roles in consortia and joint bids. That is essential. Understanding who does what and by when. Combine technical, community, and delivery strengths that will really enhance your bids. And then finally, focus on those social values and outcomes. These becoming more prevalent and really important in local authorities, and it's going to be gaining more traction as it goes on. So translate your community benefit into measurable outputs. Show how your work supports local priorities. And I'm being a bit selfish here. I'm talking about net zero and fuel poverty because that's two areas that the Catapult really does focus upon. And then really important here is evidence those results. It strengthens your credibility and really does support in future bids. So thank you very much for that. I really enjoyed sharing some insights with you. I'll hand you now over to Colin.
Hi there. So my name is Colin Nolden, as I've already been introduced. Among my roles are non-executive directorship of Community Energy Pathways, Senior Research Fellow at the Energy Institute Management School, University of Sheffield, and recently appointed Specialist Advisor to the Energy Security and the Net Zero Committee. So I'm going to talk today about procurement, social value, and community energy at this intersection. And also report some findings of a project which is funded by the Energy Demand Research Centre, funded by UK Research and Innovation. And this research has been undertaken in collaboration with Community Energy Pathways. So they've also supported this research with in-kind contribution. Next slide, please. So we've recently seen several highly relevant policy documents published: the Warm Homes Plan, the Local Power Plan. Interestingly, the Local Power Plan does not make any reference to procurement in it, which is a bit of a shame, like a missed opportunity. The Warm Homes Plan does, and interestingly, I've just highlighted this one section here, which is in the middle, which is highlighted in blue, is that they state that government is working with a task force to ensure that the design of future procurement and grant funding schemes supports the transition to high quality, low carbon jobs, supported transition of organizations of all sizes, and it specifically mentions SMEs. and voluntary community social enterprise sectors and small medium-sized enterprises. Also in this context, it specifically mentions the government's social value model. So this is good news, basically. Now, public procurement, it's about 350 billion pounds a year is the total volume of public procurement. That's about a third of public expenditure. So it's a huge amount of money. It's a huge market that potentially community energy can be part of. And public procurement of local authorities, housing associations, and so on, what we would consider anchor organisations in particular geographies, are responsible for around 1/3 of infrastructure investment in building works. And again, this is an area where community energy can contribute to. Can we have the next slide, please? So I'm going to differentiate now between two different types of procurement that are relevant to the community energy sector. One I'm calling indirect procurement, and the other one is direct procurement. So indirect procurement is an area that we've seen emerge, or rather grow, in recent years, especially in the context of very large public sector contracts. So one particular one that I've been researching is the Bristol City Leap project that I'm sure several of you have heard of, which is a big public-private partnership, a concession agreement, where it's, well, for the first 5 years, investing 424 million. And a significant share of that is for social value outcomes. And the way social value is framed in this particular contract, it is a means of holding suppliers to account, as this quote, this at the center left suggests, right? So the key strength of social value framework we've got is that actually we're able to hold suppliers to account. Then below that, there's a quote which suggests that smaller projects with lower returns but that are socially valuable can be bundled into large contracts, as long as these social value requirements can be measured, right? So as long as these outcomes can be delivered. So we're seeing these portfolio projects emerging, where we're seeing small projects included in large contracts, and these deliver significant, or these are expected to deliver significant amounts of social value. And this is a particular opportunity for the community energy sector. Next slide, please. So this is from Bristol City Leap's social value content. So of the 424 million originally contracted, 14.4% is for social value, which is about 61 million pounds, right? And in the middle in this table, the lower section is kind of brown colored, and that's the additional social value commitment. And we can see here there is, for example, 2.8 million pounds set aside for community benefit funds, so non-energy projects. And below that, we have a community energy fund, so which is 1.5 million over 5 years. So in other words, part of this commitment, or rather part of the investment of Bristol City Leap, is a specific fund which is set aside for community energy. So in other words, community energy is part of the social value commitment of Bristol City Leap. And so this is an indirect procurement pathway for community energy to pursue. Next slide, please. Now, the other pathway is direct procurement, and this is where Community Energy Pathways has a lot of experience, because it has partnered with lots of local authority organisations. So what I have here on the left is just what I've picked up from one of the procurement portals, right? So this is an example of a contract of Community Energy Pathways, in this case with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. And so we're seeing more and more of these contracts emerging, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more coming forward now as a result of the Warm Homes Plan and the Local Power Plan, of local authorities teaming up with community energy organisations. Now, this can take several different forms. It could be partnerships, it could be through procurement. But the interesting thing is that we're seeing more and more of the language of procurement kind of permeating these arrangements. And Community Energy Pathways, for example, has been for example, contracted by Suffolk County Council to deliver specific social value outcomes as part of this contract. So we're seeing kind of social value permeating these very large scale energy infrastructure contracts, as well as these smaller partnership contracts which effectively directly procure community energy. Next slide, please. So together with Community Energy Pathways, I'm undertaking some research to understand really how social value is codified within the community energy sector to make the sector more procurement ready for local authorities, but also other procuring authorities. So there's one particular project which is supported by the National Lottery, which is the Community Energy People Project, involving 11 community organisations across England. That's that map there in the middle. And it involves the creation of 33 paid jobs and 100 volunteer roles. And so what we're trying to work out from an academic perspective, from a research perspective, is to determine the appropriate scale and depth of social value measurements, what kind of variables, metrics are being used and are useful, gathering, cleaning and processing data to facilitate social value measurement, and finally calculating this data, and again working out how useful this data is and how time consuming it is to actually capture and calculate this data for community energy organizations for their objectives, but also for the funding and procuring organizations. Next slide, please. So we have these two different approaches, right? So through indirect procurement and through direct procurement. Indirect procurement, as I mentioned, it tends to be part, well, it is essentially part of large-scale contracts, so for example, large-scale infrastructure contracts, and they will have specific social value measurements. In the case of Bristol City Leap, Bristol City Council has a social value measurement framework, and the community energy organisations that are part of this, of Bristol City Leap, they need to report into this framework, which is then used to demonstrate the social value that is being delivered by Bristol City Leap as contracted. The other approach through direct procurement is quite similar. So Community Energy Pathways has worked with the social value portal to work out what the social value of several community energy organizations, you can see they're mentioned like on that slide, sorry, like on the right hand side of the slide, try to calculate what the social value generated by 7 community energy organizations was in 2024-25, and we used the same metrics that lots of procuring authorities use, which is effectively the social value portals approach. And so our calculations suggest that across 1 year, they generated about £1 million of social value. And it's really important for the sector to be able to demonstrate this kind of social value to procuring authorities, which will make it easier for local authorities to procure community energy organizations. At the same time, there's certain limitations to this particular approach to capturing social value, as there's multiple types of social value which fall out of the procurement scope. And I just mentioned that in coming slides. Next slide, please. So we're also undertaking some kind of bottom-up research to understand really what is of use to community energy organizations themselves. So not just approaching it through the lens of procuring authorities, but also understand what community energy organizations deem valuable. So in a pilot exercise among the community energy people organizations, we asked them what is valuable from a community energy perspective. And we can see in the spidergram that climate change finishes top, but second is both financial and well-being outcomes. So financial outcomes include sharing profits with members, which also could be a consequence of shared ownership, but also saving people money, right, which is fuel poverty alleviation. And then the other one is well-being, so creating community connection, improving people's health. So those are, alongside climate change, those are deemed the most valuable outcomes for community energy organizations. We will follow this up with a more in-depth survey of the sector in the coming months. Next slide, please. So we have approached social value now through this lens of procurement. However, there's multiple types of value that are being generated by community energy organizations. And also there's different ways that they're framed, and there's different parts of government that kind of value these outcomes differently. So as Jim mentioned, and John as well, there is this point about community benefit, which can arise, for example, out of shared ownership. And this is monetary value, as in this is actual money. And this can be, well, this is likely to arise from the infrastructure developments that we're going to see moving forward as part of the Clean Power Plan and the general decarbonisation drive. So this is money which will be distributed to communities, and we still have to work out exactly how money will be fairly distributed. Then we have what we call additional social value, which is what I've been discussing now. This is the social value which is being procured, for example, by local authorities. This is generally proxy-derived monetary value. So we're talking about activities and deliveries such as jobs that can be monetized, and this monetary value then creates these kind of figures like the £1 million of social value that the community energy organizations delivered according to the calculations of the social value portal. And the legislation behind that is the Procurement Act 2023, and before that there was the Social Value Public Service Act. And so procuring authorities, especially local authorities, but also central government, but also National Rail, are pursuing this kind of social value. Then finally, we have embedded social value. This is generally calculated through social returns on investment. And this is the kind of value that we often see at DNO level, for example. So the distribution network operators, if they contract a community energy organization, for example, to support their customer vulnerability services, as in to alleviate fuel poverty, these activities, they will be calculated using social return on investment calculations. We're likely to see changes to this coming forward with upcoming Rio 3 regulation. So we have kind of effectively three different strands of social value which are relevant to the community energy sector. So we have community benefit, which is actual money, then we have the social value, which is proxy derived, and then we have social return on investment. And thankfully the Green Book has recently been updated, so we're likely to see greater clarity on this, because as it stands, it still is quite a messy field with lots of different approaches to navigate, and we hope to streamline this to ensure that community energy can actually demonstrate the value that it is already generating more effectively to the likes of DESNZ, to procuring authorities, and ultimately to the Treasury, so that the support which has been promised through the local power plan can actually be translated into long-term inclusion of the sector in government decarbonisation plans. So thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Colin, and thank you, Jim, for those excellent presentations. Some really good recommendations and insight in both of those. I think we've got a few questions coming into chat, and please do put them directly into the Q&A box. Right. So, Jim, your final slide you did. So your final slide about the procurement framework.
Do you want me to read it out? Cool. John's got some background noise, so I will take over some questions. Thank you both so much. First of all, that was really, really, really interesting. So, Jim, would you be able to elaborate on the procurement frameworks and dynamic purchasing systems, and how community energy enterprises can get themselves listed on them?
Yeah, so obviously these frameworks are put in place for larger scale projects generally, or DPS, where there's a number of ongoing projects that they want various people involved in. So for getting on board one of these, whoever the lead partner is would need to get themselves registered. And also generally application to these frameworks isn't as difficult as one might think they are. Generally, it's a very much a due diligence check in terms of your financial standings and capability. And then what happens on these frameworks is that consortia or community groups will be tested at a tender stage on their experience, knowledge, and impact in that particular sector. So actually getting on board the frameworks is relatively straightforward. The real test comes when you're on board and then start bidding into projects. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jim. So I'm going to just look to the Q&A. So Tim has asked a question. I'm just going to read it out. It's quite long. I entirely agree about the need for community energy projects to demonstrate professionalism in their approach. But for new community energy bodies, we seem to be expected to deliver professionalism, but without the specialist in-house expertise or volunteer experience in this specialist area. So the question is, how can the costs of setting up and running new community energy bodies be funded until there are established revenue streams through which core costs can be funded?
Good question.
Jim or Colin?
I can put my procurement spin on it, Colin, if you like first,
Yeah.
and then you can come in if after. So yes, you're 100% right. It is difficult. In practice, and from what I know from my limited experience in this, is that generally community energy bodies bridge the gap by using a number of different things. So you can use development grants that cover consultancy time and governance. So you're buying expertise. You can do small scale capital partner loans to fund early risk work and get professional advice, or treating the development and the management as part of the actual project cost. So you can recover that cost later through your through the delivery of the project, through tariff savings or service fees. So that's how I would.
Thank you, Jim. Colin, let's have your spin.
This has been one of the struggles of the sector, right? Is community energy organisations, they generally face, if you like, a valley of death between the establishment and actually the delivery of the first services. So the Community Energy People's Project specifically targets this area. So 33 jobs are being created as part of the Community Energy People's Project among new community energy organizations, but also more established ones. And this is exactly this point, is to deliver professionalism. So in other words, funders like the Community Energy People's Project is funded by the National Lottery. So funders actually recognize this gap. And now that there is more recognition of this gap, and also how this gap can be closed, for example, through the Community Energy People's Project, hopefully we will see more of this funding forthcoming. And it will be interesting to see how GBE, so Great British Energy, and DESNZ will support the sector moving forward, because the Community Energy Fund, for example, has been relatively successful in supporting the scoping stage, but it is widely now understood that to actually progress from scoping, so from the feasibility studies to delivery, this valley of death needs to be covered. It needs to be bridged. So hopefully we see more funding coming forward. And it's also these kind of questions that need to be continuously asked to ensure that the likes of GBE and DESNZ are aware that this is a critical area of funding that the community energy sector could make or break on.
Fantastic. Thank you both. So I'm looking to the Q&A again. Paul Fair has asked something about the LPP, Local Power Plan. Does the Local Power Plan require local authorities to work in partnership with community energy, or will GBE fund local authorities to fund projects themselves?
That's a good question. My reading of the Local Power Plan is that there's no requirement for local authorities to partner with community energy organisations, because it is for both local authorities and for community energy organisations, and it's in that sense agnostic who champions local power delivery in a particular area. So if the local authority has the capacity, the willingness to progress, then the local authority will be supported through the local power plan. However, if community energy organisations are in a position to do so, then they will be supported. Now, ideally, of course, there will be collaboration, and it is quite difficult really to imagine, well, to have community energy organisations progressing without any kind of involvement of the local authority. But it is in that sense agnostic. So there isn't a requirement for partnership between local authorities and community energy. I hope that kind of answers that question.
Has that covered it, Paul, or did you have a follow-up?
I think you followed up in the chats asking, so why would they partner with community energy?
That is a good question. So we are in certain geographies, the community energy sector has more energy specialists working on energy than the local authorities themselves. So a good example is Sussex. So we're talking about East and West Sussex. There's about 60 full-time employees working for various community energy organisations, which is a lot more than the energy experts working across the local authorities in that area. So in other words, there is the institutional capacity to deliver on project which exceeds that of local authorities in certain geographies. So in those cases, it makes a lot of sense for the local authorities to partner with community energy organisations, because they have all this local capacity, which is also very much aligned with the social value objectives, if not the public value objectives of the public sector. In areas where the community energy sector is not so strong, we've had more mixed results. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence of community energy organisations having feasibility studies funded by the Community Energy Fund in partnership with local authorities, only for the local authority then subsequently choosing to progress without the community energy organisation, right? That is a shame, because it's also obviously a huge amount of effort goes into that, and there isn't really a mechanism to, if you like, hold local authorities to account over that. So it is very much down to the local authorities, and often even to one particular individual within the local authority that can see the value of partnering with the community energy sector. So sadly, there isn't really a unified approach or any kind of requirement or mandate within the local power plan to collaborate with community energy organisations.
Thanks, Colin. Okay. So yeah, Paul's mentioned in the chat, the reason I'm asking is because we've seen a few pull out of community energy projects since the local power plan. Okay, let's have a look at some more questions. Thank you so much for people who've submitted question. Marcella, let's go on to yours. So you've got a question around case studies. Is there a source of case studies of how local authorities have creatively worked with community energy groups? We work with a number of groups in London through grants, but would like to move towards more procured services. The answer is yes, there are case studies. But Colin, do you want to elaborate? I saw you unmuted yourself.
No, I was hoping that you could answer that question, because I'm not.
Yeah, this is something we have got on our website at Community Energy England. So there is, I can send a link in the follow-up email to all of the registrants for this event. We certainly do have a whole range of different case studies of different kind of technologies, different groups, stages, working with local authorities, working with other organisations. It's in the kind of tools and guidance section of our website, of our Community Energy England website. But I will share the link after this, and maybe Kim, you could pop it in the chat if that's easy enough to do. Great. Okay, let's go to, there's another question here from Lee Barker. What do people here generally feel about municipal energy projects? They are currently few, but some, example Orkney Wind Farm, are large, but didn't include either community ownership or community finance. Will the community energy sector lose ground and money to local authorities when they realise the money available, or will municipal energy projects be mandated to provide a CBF, a community benefit fund? Who wants to take that? Do you want to give it a go, Colin?
Yes.
Perfect.
So
Thanks.
the discussions around community benefit funds are ongoing, right? So this is a very significant piece of work because, for example, the development of a new substation will entail a community benefit fund of over £500,000, right? So around £530,000. And I think for every kilometre of overhead transmission line, adjacent communities are entitled to £200,000. So new infrastructure development comes with a community benefit fund, but is yet to be decided how these community benefit funds will be distributed, who will be the holder of the funds, how they will be managed. And also, there's actually still question marks about whether these community benefit funds are one-off funds or whether they are annual payments. So this still has to be decided and is currently being negotiated. One school of thought, one avenue is to use that money to support local energy related services. So that could be local fuel poverty alleviation and so on. And that would benefit local community energy organizations. But of course, one cannot mandate that because not every municipality has a community energy organization to do so. So community benefit funds could well be a very significant opportunity for the sector, but we're not quite sure how they will land. But it is certain that more money will be available to areas, whether they might be municipalities or how we want to frame them, hosting new energy infrastructure. But then this question about whether the sector will lose ground and money to local authorities, again, it depends on the risk appetite of the local authorities, because they do not necessarily have the in-house skills to develop local energy projects. They are not necessarily going to be involved in the delivery of municipal projects. So a lot depends on the local geography, on the local skill set, on the local capabilities and capacity, on a myriad of factors, really, which determine the role of community energy in relation to the local authority. I know that's a half answer, but that's all I can give.
No, that's great. Thanks, Colin. I think John has some stuff to say on this, but he's got a bit of background noise. He did put a message in the chat, though, which I'm just going to read out. It's an interesting question that overlap between community energy and municipal energy. Both technically now share some characteristics, i.e. both place-based, both democratic governance. I find the main difference is how engaged the wider public are. All council taxpayers benefit from municipal ownership. Sorry, my scroll button's being really annoying. Here we go. All council taxpayers benefit from municipal ownership, but might not know about it, whereas a more limited pool of community energy members may directly benefit from community energy, but the area is given the opportunity to invest and be a member. Yeah, thank you for that, John, in the chat. Okay, bit more time for questions. So let's have a look. We've got one from Michael Hewson. Does Colin have any tips for new community energy companies to develop forecasts of social value, which it can later compare results against once projects are delivered? Thinking to use this to get buy-in to projects now, but to demonstrate quality for later projects.
No, that's a very good question. We do not have a database which evidences the social value that community energy projects, individual projects or organizations or the sector delivers. As part of this project that I'm undertaking, funded by the Energy Demand Research Centre, we are doing some social value measurements and calculations using different approaches, so social return on investment and the more conventional kind of procurement social value approach. So we do hope to build up a library, if you like, of projects that have been socially valued. And based on that, then we hope that the sector will be in a stronger position to make the case for partnering and for delivery and to be procured in the future. We're also looking to potentially there is ongoing discussions with net zero hubs about this, because there's all this work has been done around the community energy funds and so on, and it would be useful to do some evaluation of how socially valuable these projects have been in the past, because that again would create a better foundation and greater visibility to the Treasury in terms of what the sector as such can deliver. So we're working towards it.
Yeah. Jim, you have put a comment in the chat. Do you want to expand on that a bit, or just
someone put in the Frank popped in the chat just saying about how he registered on Pro Contract, and he says recommending other community energy groups do the same. And he said simple searches around your local authorities and contact with procurement will get you going. And on the back of that, I just wanted to emphasise the point that it's really important that you select the correct CPV code, Common Procurement Vocabulary Code, bit of a mouthful. So you get the opportunities come up in the right sectors that you can offer your services and capabilities. So just emphasising on the back of that how important it is to get that bit right.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jim. This is a question that John has actually sent me, which is quite an interesting one. So local authorities are obliged to follow strict procurement rules, which often involves advertising tenders nationally. What more can local authorities with existing procurement rules do to make it easier to partner with their local community energy enterprises?
So yeah, their hands are tied. It is really difficult because the Procurement Act is all around transparency and also fair trade. So it is very difficult. But under the social value section, you can actually there is a part where it's where you're offering like a social value impact to your area. So if you're a community group in that area, you can have a direct input on that social value question, and then obviously that will bring you further up the rankings on that particular section, which will strengthen your bid generally. So if you can like kind of tie it all in, so everything you deliver links to that social value impact, that put you in a very strong position to win in that particular sector, area, local authority. But it is really, really difficult, and I feel sorry for them because their hands are really tied. It is really difficult.
Colin, do you want to come in there?
Can I just add to that? Now, what we've seen in the past is some quite successful partnerships emerging. So there's Plymouth Energy Community, Bath and West Community Energy. So some of them best established community energy organizations, they have quite successful partnerships. And this kind of partnership, it tends to progress outside of the procurement space. So there is this one avenue, which is the one which is probably that local authorities feel the most comfortable with, is through procurement, because of these transparency rules that Jim mentioned. And local authorities, they want to be seen, and well, for obvious reasons, they need to be seen, and they need to follow all these transparency procedures. But there is also this alternative of partnership, and that can take various different forms. Now, I'm not an expert on that, so I cannot provide any further detail, but that is an alternative pathway that can be discussed.
Great, thank you both. So, are there any last questions? We've got 10 minutes left, so we've got probably time for just one quick question. Let's have a look in the question box. Okay, so Paul Fair has another one. Is there a benefit in tendering of working with an established organisation with a track record like Energy for All?
So, from my perspective, taking like away the Energy for All bit, but from my perspective, if there's a good partnership coming through, like an established consortia or partnership, joint partnership, for example, you can tap into their experience and knowledge and use that to strengthen your bid. You can also gain a lot of insightful information from them, learn from them about how they go about their tendering practices, their case study preparation, etc., etc. Track record gives them a better foundation to bid upon, so they've got a lot more experience to bid upon. They've got a lot more knowledge and know-how in that sector. So, from my perspective, you do evaluate everybody as a blank canvas. You don't take anything for granted. Everyone starts from zero, but what it does do is give that bid more what's the word I want to use, more meat on the bones, shall we say. It's just it will do you good partnering up with an experienced organisation to help, one, understand the process, and two, obviously start getting some work in that area.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Richard McCarthy's put in the chat, Energy for All have high satisfaction ratings with local authorities that have used them. North Lincolnshire Council. Nice. That's excellent. They spoke at a previous webinar of ours, Seeing is Believing webinars of ours, which was great. Okay, lovely. I think we probably need to start to wrap up.
Sorry, there's one question there in the chat. I'll just see. Is GB
go
Energy
for it.
likely to step into underwriting partnering projects in support of community energy procurement? That's a very, very good question, because as I mentioned, the local power plan does not mention procurement, right? So in other words, they're quite cagey about the role. So it is still unclear exactly what role exactly GB Energy will play in this space. They're supportive of the community energy sector. No, but it is unclear whether there be underwriting or partnering projects and supporting procurement, because they're being quite agnostic about how local energy is being delivered. So they will want to see the best value, best social value projects progressing, whether these are local authority led or community energy led. So yeah, we would just need to see what comes out in the coming months and so on, because there's also lots of movement around regional energy strategic planning, for example, from the National Energy System Operator. There's the local area energy plans, and we really need to see how all of this kind of fits together into a kind of a more coherent strategy, and then work out how the community energy sector fits into that. But the narrative that is coming forward is that GB Energy is supportive of the sector. But yeah, we need to see how that translates into kind of more concrete support beyond warm words.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both so much, Colin and Jim, and everyone for coming. I've got a few wrap-up slides, so we'll move on from the Q&A now. If anyone does have any final questions, please do just drop us an email. I'll send a follow-up email probably early next week now. And the slides and recording will be available as well. So I just wanted to highlight some of our upcoming Seeing is Believing events. So events that are also included in this programme that's funded by the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub. We will be, well, John will be in Newcastle next week on Wednesday. If anyone is sort of near to Newcastle and wants to go along, there's going to be a big full day in-person networking event for this project. John will be talking about the local power plan. There'll be lots of breakout groups. There'll be a panel discussion. Should be a really, really good event. Then we as CEE are going to run another webinar similar to this on the 12th of March, again over lunch, so from 12:30 till 1:30. This session on the 12th of March is going to be more about de-risking community energy. We're going to hear from a couple of legal experts. So Sonia Bedford, some of you may know of her already. She's absolutely brilliant. And someone from Wrigley's solicitors as well will be there. And then we'll also have the CEO of Climate Action Northumberland as well, talking about his experience. And on the 18th of March, the times are TBC. It was going to be 10:30 till 3:30. It might be a bit of a shorter session. But on the 18th of March, we're going to do a big kind of online Seeing is Believing networking event. So we've got some of the in-person networking things happening Wednesday next week, but we also wanted to do like an online version as well. So people who can't come in person could come to that. We'll hear from presentations. There'll be breakout discussions all around kind of community energy topics and working with local authorities, kind of specifically focusing on the North East and Yorkshire. And then finally, the last Seeing is Believing event is online. We'll be running it on the 26th of March from 12 until 1. This is a matchmaking event, so it's kind of dating for community energy organisations to be linked up with other community energy organisations in the North East and Yorkshire. So less experienced groups can kind of be linked up with more experienced groups, and you can all learn from each other and collaborate. There's also the possibility of linking up community energy organisations in the North East and Yorkshire with local authorities as well in that area. So we really want to kind of like put in the effort to make those kind of like matches and those connections during that session. So it'll be quite interactive and quite collaborative. That is the events that we have coming up. We also have generally just a lot of other Community Energy England events on our website, which I'll send around as well, but I just wanted to highlight those Seeing is Believing events. Great, okay, and just wanted to give a big shout out again to the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub for funding this programme. We're really, really, really grateful for the support. They've funded it and delivered it as well with us, which is fantastic. So we have got a few minutes left. If Kim, you could pop the feedback survey on the screen, it'd be really, really useful if you're all happy to give us some feedback about the session. The last question as well is asking you whether you'd like to be linked up with another community energy organisation in the North East and Yorkshire if you're based in that area, just to give us a feel of who's interested.